Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today I am finally going to be reviewing Alan Baxter's latest release, Blood Covenant. So I was introduced to Alan Baxter last year with his release of Sallowbend. I was originally supposed to get that book in a Nightworms package, and they weren't able to send us that book, and it ended up coming in a Twisted Retreat box, which was awesome, and I read it, I loved it. I think it was my second best read of 2023, so I was super excited to read more from Alan Baxter. He's an Australian-based horror author. He's been around for a little bit, but I really didn't know anything about him until Sallowbend. So this was released recently by Cemetery Dance, and then this is the limited edition for Twisted Retreat. It was in our May boxes. This book is a beautiful edition. I'm going to take the, whatever you call these things, jacket off. You get this like beautiful house with the mountains and the blood. This is obviously the house from the actual story. It's technically a hotel, and it has all the blood dripping, which I love. Blood covered on the spine, and then you have this again on the back. Except now there's a moon. Now I really like this edition without the jacket, but I do actually think I prefer the original cover art to this particular cover art. It's got this moment in there as well, which I really like. And this edition is signed, which is also awesome. I'm gonna read the back of the book for you guys right now. Whatever happens, don't bleed. What should have been a breeze of a bank heist for James Glenn and his crew goes violently wrong, forcing them to flee blood-stained and angry. They stumble onto a remote lodge that doesn't open for another month, a perfect place to lie low until the heat's off, except it's occupied. The Moore family, just arrived to prepare for the season, are taken hostage by the criminals, but not without bloodshed. And when blood gets spilled, something ancient notices, something malevolent, something ravenous. Their only hope is the youngest Moore, teenager Reuben, outside and unseen when James and his gang arrive. It's up to Reuben to get help and save his family, but the influence of the ancient evil is taking a toll on him as well. This book reminded me quite a lot of Philip Fracasse's A Child Alone with Strangers, mixed in with The Haunting in Connecticut. I got real Haunting in Connecticut vibes. There's a lot of really interesting stuff in this story, but kind of like how I felt with Tim Meyer's Lacuna's Point, I felt like a lot of the more interesting storylines were the secondary storylines, and the main storyline was kind of a drag, unfortunately. So we focus primarily on the actual hostage situation of the Moore family in the hotels taken by James, Paul, and Deanna, who are our bank robbers, and how they are operating while the house is slowly starting to come to life and like take over everybody as well. I guess you could say it's kind of a cosmic entity that's haunting this house, this kind of demonic force. I don't really know. The imagery that went into it was really cool, and because it's kind of hinted at throughout the entirety of the book, I also didn't feel with like the big reveal that it was this kind of like, oh my god, that came out of nowhere moment, if that makes sense. But what it actually was did feel like it kind of came out of nowhere, and I kind of would have liked more explanation onto what it was. And I feel like instead of being this kind of demonic evil force, I would have preferred it to just kind of stay in the realm of like this haunting ideology. That being said, the most interesting parts of this story for me were the backstories. Primarily, Clay and Molly's backstory. It's only like 1 or 2 chapters really, and yet it was the most interesting to me, and I really wanted that to be fully expanded upon. I also really wanted the story and the history of the house to be expanded on. I needed more from the Ellery family. I wanted to really know what happened there. I didn't want that story to be told in this flashback hearsay from a realtor telling Clay and Molly what was going on. I felt like it would have been much more scary if we had really in-depth chapters going over that night and what happened with the Ellery family in the hotel. I think that would have been absolutely terrifying and spine-tingling and given me more horror than what we had, because what was described in that like 1 chapter was scarier than anything else in the entire book, including the like situations that these people were in. I also can't say I loved any of our main characters, unfortunately. Reuben made a lot of really dumb decisions, and yes, he is a terrified 13-year-old boy, and I understand those decisions, but I just kept thinking, if he had just immediately run for help the moment everything started going down, none of the super bad stuff would have happened. And then Ruben has like multiple times where he can do that, and he keeps choosing not to. And I understand how Alan Baxter eventually explained that away of being like, the forces of evil were kind of slowly corrupting him. But they weren't at first. They weren't at first, and they kind of weren't the second time, maybe not the third time. So like, that was just kind of a minor plot hole to me, where I felt like that just could have solved a lot of issues for everybody. I also just couldn't connect with any of the characters. Like, probably Lee, I found her the most likable and the most to connect with. Clay to an extent, but like Grant and Marcus and Simon all never felt like fully fleshed out characters. So when things start happening to our casting characters, like when bad things start happening, I didn't really feel bad for them because I didn't have a reason to know who they were. And then the same goes for Rick, Deanna, James, and Paul. Those are characters who all get really slight hints at like where they came from to create who they are. And we really only go in depth with James, but I feel like I needed to know more about Rick, Deanna, and Paul to care about them and for their moral like conundrum to feel effective, and it didn't. Did I read this book very quickly and enjoy the actual read? Yeah, I did. This was a 4-star read for me, but just barely, because the second half of the book definitely picked up and was a lot more engaging than the first half. The first half is a lot of just like laying groundwork for what's going to come, but then still not like diving into the details that I felt I needed. And this is, again, like Lacuna's point, there's a really good story in here. I just felt like the good parts were put on the back burner, and the kind of more boring parts were those that were highlighted. It also felt really, really rushed. I felt like, again, I really wanted more about the Ellery family and Clay and Molly's backstory, and they were so rushed and just kind of put there for the reader to know about them. But I felt like if Alan Baxter just taken his time and really built those stories up, everything else would have flowed better, and I would have been more connected to what was happening. It also just kind of became this like repetitive story where it was like, it's morning, they make food, they're tied up, they go on a bathroom break, they try to reason with their captors, it turns to night, things get bad, things get somehow worse, things get supernatural, it's morning, they eat, we start over. You know, like it just felt very, very formulaic for a little bit, until that formula was finally broken. But it felt like there was like 3 days worth of them just kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again. But it was well written. There were definitely typos in my edition. So I'm not sure if that's from Twisted Retreat's end or from Cemetery Dance's end, but there were several typos, not just like 1 or 2 here or there, but I'm not sure where that came from, so I'm not gonna, that's not Alan Baxter's fault, I don't believe. And another thing that I was like really confused by, and this is so nitpicky, this is so nitpicky. There's a scene where they're like, James popped the cork off the bottle of Jack Daniels. Maybe in Australia, Jack Daniels is sealed with a cork, but a new bottle of Jack Daniels has a shrink wrap, like plastic wrap thing on it, and you tear it off, and then it's a twist top, not a cork. And so I was very, very confused by that. I looked, I think there is one very, very high-end bottle of Jack Daniels, like a single barrel, that has a cork top, but I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not sure how they do it in Australia, but I was really confused by that, and just, this is like the bartender in me being like super nitpicky, but like, Jack Daniels isn't sealed with a cork. But I did love the Australian setting. I love that the bush was kind of a character. I love that like wombats are being mentioned as if they're raccoons, and kangaroos are being mentioned like they're wolves. Like, that was really cool for me, because I've never been to Australia, but like those are kind of almost like fantastical creatures to me, because we don't really have them here. But there's like a whole scene with a kangaroo, and it's scary, and it's well done. And I really, really appreciated that. So the bones of this book was there, but the blood in the veins was not for this story, and I'm bummed to say that. But if you liked Alan Baxter and you liked Saloben, I don't want to discourage anybody from reading this. This is not going to be on that level of Saloben. It is still enjoyable, it is still engaging, it is still creepy. I just feel like I needed more. The ideas were there, the execution wasn't what I wanted from it. But I will definitely be reading more from Alan Baxter. I really enjoy his creativity and his settings, and some of the imagery he does is really, really, really well done and very, very terrifying. And I feel like had Ruben been more of a compelling character as well, I probably would have really resonated with him and how terrifying his storyline is. But I just had a hard time in general with it because I just got the glaring plot hole of if he had just run on that first day, in that first 20 minutes, like none of this story would have happened. And I just couldn't quite get past that. And then some of the decisions he made going on afterwards. And even like in the ending gets really like, the climax comes really quickly at the end, and then it just like, the book ends. And I kind of hate when they do that. Like Stephen King does that with Pet Sematary. And it just, it's one of those things that like, give me a longer ending. Like I've waited so long for this big monster reveal. Give me more. But whatever. Anyways, 4 stars, very, very low 4 stars, teetering on a 3-star read. But at the end of the day, the second half really had me kind of glued to the page, and I read the last 70 pages. Like I just needed to get through them. Like nothing was going to stop me from reading those last 70 pages. So we have that. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I try to post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. I know this video is going up on a Friday. My bad. But yes, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all next time. Mwah.